Hi, I'm Thanks Too Much, and today we're going to be taking a look at Alien Isolation, one of the better video games for the Alien franchise that has come out in quite some time. As a warning, there will be some mild spoilers in this video. It doesn't really show that much of anything, and I don't really discuss the ending, but I just want to give a little heads up for those who haven't experienced this game because it is one of a kind. That being said, let's get into it. The Alien franchise might have lost some of its star power due to the mixed reactions of its two most recent movies, Prometheus and Alien Covenant, respectively, but this does not stop the first two movies from being must see films for anyone who is even remotely interested in both sci fi horror and sci fi action. I'm hardly the first to say this, but both Alien and Aliens are movies that defined these genres. However, it's also important to note that not much else of notice has come from this franchise in terms of films. The third and fourth movies, along with their spin offs, range from decent to absolutely horrible, and the more recent prequel films failed to reignite the interest of the franchise, even with the original director Ridley Scott back at the helm. Personally, I think Prometheus and Alien Covenant are fine, but I can see why people don't like them at all since they mess with the lore in ways that take away from the magic and mystery of the xenomorph. So it should come as no surprise that where films were dropping the ball, video games picked up the slack. The games in the Aliens universe are usually considered to do their own thing, separate from the movie lore, and some of the best games have mostly played around with the Alien vs. Predator crossover. The most popular and critically acclaimed being Alien vs. Predator 2, which successfully captured how to play as a colonial marine, a predator, and an alien, with the Alien campaign being the most memorable for capturing the sense of brutality and mercilessness that the xenomorph represents. These games were fantastic, but they weren't tied to the continuity of the actual Aliens lore. Not officially, anyway. That would all change with Gearbox's Aliens Colonial Marines, a beautiful promise that ended up breaking the hearts of both Alien and gaming fans back in 2012. I'll keep this short since the less said about Aliens Colonial Marines the better, but it's worth noting that one of the big reasons why this game was such a disappointing flop was because it promised to continue the story of the Aliens film, and while, yes, it kind of does, it does it in a way that shows those who were making the game did not care about the lore of the Aliens franchise at all. It was a mediocre first person shooter at best with the Aliens license slapped on top, and no passion equals no quality. But once the uproar of how disappointing the game was subsided, the publishers at Sega had to make amends. The next game in the series would be helmed by Creative Assembly, and it would also promise their game would be a sequel of sorts, but to the first movie. This is important because up until now, nearly all the games related to the Aliens franchise would always focus on the action elements that were inspired by the second movie, with a few exceptions coming from the very early games released in home computers back in the 80s. This game was Alien Isolation, and it would promise the opposite of what Colonial Marines promised. Where Colonial Marines promised fast paced motion, Isolation would be slower and methodical. Where Colonial Marines promised action, Isolation promised slow burn tension. The only thing both titles promised was a sense of fear and dread, and while Colonial Marines completely failed, Isolation passed with flying colors. However, many people would be wary of Alien Isolation because of the game that came before it. Of course, this wasn't fair, but it was an understandable worry, especially for Aliens fans that were burned one too many times with subpar games of their beloved franchise. However, even though Colonial Marines and Isolation share the same franchise, their methods of honoring that franchise are night and day. The choice to make Alien Isolation more of a first person stealth game than an all out shooter not only honors the feeling of the first movie, but it also separates itself from any relation others might see from previous games in the franchise, especially Colonial Marines. You play as Amanda Ripley, Ellen Ripley's daughter. It's been 15 years since the events of the first movie, and throughout all this time, Amanda has been looking for her mother. Amanda has grown up to be an engineer for the Weyland-Yutani Corporation, a smart, self-reliant, and no-nonsense woman. Even though she has had to grow up accepting that her mother might be lost forever, She never lost hope that one day she could find her, or at least know what her ultimate fate was, to get some closure, which is a subplot taken directly from Aliens, but it's used effectively here as a simple narrative thread for the player to connect with Amanda. The game's opening cutscene sees her speak with an android called Samuels, a compassionate character for an artificial person, as he tells her that the Nostromo's black box was recovered by a failing competitor to Weyland-Yutani called Seegson, and they currently have it in their own massive space station known as a Sevastopol. So, your journey begins with a simple recovery mission, with anything and everything that could possibly go wrong, going wrong even before you enter the Sevastopol. Thankfully, Amanda is the kind of person you want to take this journey with. Making her Ellen Ripley's daughter is one of those creative decisions that connects this game to the events and characters of the first movie without having to be too in-your-face about it. Amanda herself is a likable character. She doesn't say much, but when she does speak, it's enough to know that she is a tough-as-nails yet compassionate person that will get the job done even in the face of extreme danger and will put herself in said danger to help others. She walks the walk before she talks the talk. There is no real character arc for Amanda in this game, but she doesn't really need one, and character growth isn't really necessary for the story that Isolation wants to tell. She might be Ellen Ripley's daughter, and she definitely inherited her mother's no-nonsense attitude, but at the end of the day, Amanda is a normal person stuck in an extraordinary situation, and she needs to use brains more than brawn if she expects to survive the horrors of the Sevastopol. Some have criticized that Amanda's character is lacking because while the story of her finding what happened to her mother is supposed to be center stage, it all gets left in the back burner once the shit really hits the fan, and you don't go back to this narrative thread until well over halfway through the game. While I understand this viewpoint, I think people forget that once Amanda realizes she is stuck in a gigantic space station that harbors hostile humans, homicidal androids, and a freaking killer xenomorph, it's completely understandable that priorities will change from search to survival and getting the hell out of the Sevastopol. Throughout the game, Amanda needs to be resourceful, and she uses a wide variety of tools that emphasize her knowledge as an engineer. These tools may have simple uses, but Amanda will need them if she is going to survive not only the alien, but also the paranoid humans and glitched out second-rate androids I mentioned before. This is what I mean by her using brains more than brawn. You can shoot and even beat up humans and androids, which is likely to cost you resources vital to survival, but once the xenomorph comes out, you better think tactically against a nemesis that can easily rip you to shreds. Amanda's reactions to her situations are also very appropriate. The first time she sees the alien, she hides in absolute terror, and she'll curse when hostile humans shoot at her because of their paranoia, and she'll utter a dreadful "fuck" when the alien sees her, and you know you're doomed again and again and again. She's relatable not just because she's brave, but because she is more often than not terrified of everything going on around her, but she has no choice but to move forward unless you want to become an alien snack. Or worse. But even after the alien eats your face for the 18th time, you want to see Amanda succeed, because she is a likable character. Maybe not deep, but likable. Which is good, because if we want her to make it out of this adventure alive, then we need to care for her as much as we are scared of the alien. Speaking of the alien, previous games have thrown aliens at you in bulk, making them scary in numbers and causing tension due to the fear of being overwhelmed, since they were basically a herd monster, just like the second movie. Each alien was lethal, but you had an arsenal of guns to fight back, including the now super iconic pulse rifle. That's not the case for Isolation. You are only hunted by one xenomorph, but one is enough to showcase how this alien is pretty much the perfect hunter. Isolation makes you fear the alien again, which is quite the accomplishment considering it's such an iconic monster by this point in our popular culture. It accomplishes this in many ways. First and most obvious is the physical look of the alien. The damn thing is at least 9 feet tall, and it easily towers over you or any human. Creative Assembly built their own graphics engine for this game, and it perfectly allows for the alien to appear as this unfeeling, unstoppable killing machine that stalks you relentlessly as you try to desperately elude it. Another thing that makes the alien terrifying is that it is practically invincible and you have no real offensive weapons to protect yourself. You have guns, but Amanda is not a soldier, and even if she was, the guns barely do anything to the alien. A shotgun blast might push it back a few feet, but a revolver will do jack shit to it. You really only have gadgets for distraction, at least in the first half of the game, and they will be vital. The alien will always be hot on your tail, and when you need to use your tools in close proximity to the alien to advance your progress, you run the risk of it hearing you use them and sneak up on you for an instant kill. Either you hide and wait patiently for minutes on end and hope that the alien will get bored and climb into the vents, or you throw a noisemaker or a flare to distract the alien while you use your tools like your hack tool or torch to proceed to your next objective. It's these high-risk, high-reward moments that really highlight just how tense this game can be, because you have to make white-knuckle decisions on the spot or risk the alien having your face for lunch, especially on harder difficulties. When I first played this game, I played on hard difficulty, and the alien is a damn sharp fellow in this difficulty. It's not messing around. This thing wants you dead, and dead you will be if you're not patient and use your gadgets at your disposal to distract it, or at least until you get the flamethrower at halfway point of the game, or eventually make more powerful weapons like Molotovs or pipe bombs. These weapons still can't kill the alien, but they do scare it away for a bit, which buys you time to get things done, but only for a moment. A moment where the alien is still scratching and crawling in the vents and you're always alert for when the damn thing will appear and start looking for you again. Sound is another way Creative Assembly makes the Xenomorph a terrifying foe. The idea is that you are always hiding from this terror from another world, so you'll hear it more often than you'll see it. If you see it, you're either about to die or you have a few seconds to hide before it spots you. The footsteps the alien makes every time it's close by and looking for you are absolutely terrifying, and nothing gets the heart pumping like hiding underneath a desk and knowing the alien is on the other side. I remember when the Resident Evil 2 remake came out and people loved Mr. X and how terrifying he was. One of the things that made him so scary were his footsteps and how slowly but menacingly he headed towards you. I wonder if those people played Alien Isolation first, because the footsteps of the Xenomorph are equally, if not more terrifying, and really get the imagination going of the really bad things that will happen to you if the alien finds you. But it's not just footsteps. The sounds of the alien giving up and jumping into a nearby vent as you breathe a sign of relief, only for the damn thing to drop 30 seconds later with a menacing thunk as it snarls and continues to search for you and you have to hide again. It all works to make the alien a perfect nemesis. Not since Resident Evil 3 Nemesis that I actually dread so much being chased by such a relentless monster, and it's the fact that you are prey and an active participant at being prey that makes the Xenomorph scary all over again, which is something only video games are equipped to do. For all that they can offer, movies are passive media. You can rewind and fast forward all you want, but you are at the mercy of what the film director wants to show you. But video games are active media. As Amanda, you are playing in her skin, so to speak. So you are the one being hunted. You are the one being chased. And if you are careless, you'll be the one whose face will be eaten by the alien, and then it's game over, man. Game over. No, seriously. It's this feeling, the feeling of being prey, that gives the alien a new form of fear factor. To illustrate that point in more detail, the further you progress into the game, the more the alien seems to learn in searching for you. It becomes more aggressive, it gets irritated easily, and its patterns become even more unpredictable, which is saying a lot because the alien has no real pattern when looking for you to begin with. While researching for this video, I found that the genius way Creative Assembly made it seem like the alien learns as you go through the game is by simply unlocking new AI behaviors as the game goes along. So it gives the illusion that the alien learns when all that's really happening is more AI codes are opened for varying behaviors. Still, it has the desired effect, and this makes the alien stay terrifying through the entire 15 to 20 hour game experience. The alien in Alien Isolation is the star of the game, along with Amanda. But 15 to 20 hours of a cat and mouse game might seem like a little too much for some people, and indeed, it would be if it wasn't for the setting of the Sevastopol. One of the many things that made the original Alien movie such a classic was the setting. Sure, the unknown alien and crew of the Nostromo brought this setting and environment to life, but even if you took that away, the neo-futuristic hallways and computers of the Nostromo made it feel like you were in the future, without making the changes too drastic for someone watching the movie back in 1979. The time that the first Alien movie was made was also significant since the dawn of new technologies were being created in the real world, and this allowed the Alien film to bring to life a futuristic setting that still feels plausible even today, minus the big screen computers. People wanted to explore the Nostromo because of this, and now, thanks to Alien Isolation, you can. The Sevastopol itself is supposed to be modeled after the Nostromo, which gives developers license to add the blanks that our imaginations might have filled in as moviegoers. When you arrive in the Sevastopol, it is deserted and pretty much a derelict. The feeling of emptiness and uneasiness in a place that once saw daily human activity is similar to the feeling I got when watching Aliens and seeing the Colonial Marines investigate Hadley's Hope. As you get deeper into the game, you take the time and risk to read computer logs and audio logs, and you start to find out what daily life used to be on the Sevastopol before a xenomorph crashed the party. Some have criticized that these types of story beats are redundant to games like Dead Space, but those people forget that Dead Space took huge amounts of inspiration from the Aliens franchise. So, in a way, Alien Isolation takes the same gameplay and story bits it inspired and puts them in their place. The Sevastopol is able to maintain its inspiration to the Nostromo thanks to the unseen characters whose computer and audio logs you read and listen to. There are stories of neglect, manipulation, urgency, desperation, and anger, and all that bleeds into the actual environment as the physical state of the Sevastopol deteriorates the deeper you go into the game. The Sevastopol has been in decline since the days of the original movie, and no one, not any individual or even the higher-ups at Seegson, can be bothered to lift a finger. So the people living in the Sevastopol need to make do with what they can, complaining endlessly along the way and just doing their jobs until their time in the Sevastopol comes to an end. Thankfully, Alien Isolation gives you an environment whose history you want to learn about, even if you are not particularly well informed on the movies. The Sevastopol might not be as intriguing as, say, Rapture from BioShock, but it's nonetheless a well-crafted setting with a template that does its inspiration justice, not to mention that the humans and androids still alive and operating on the station help drive the point that Amanda should be anywhere but in this damn station. By the time Amanda arrives on the Sevastopol, the majority of survivors are looking out for themselves. Similar to many stories from the Walking Dead franchise, pockets of survivors have formed and they won't let anyone in their circle that they don't know. In fact, most will shoot first, ask questions later. What makes the human survivors terrifying, yet sympathetic, is that when you have the drop on them and can eavesdrop on their conversations, you learn that most are not necessarily bad people, but they are stuck in a huge space station with a killer alien that is picking them off one by one. Add to this betrayal between groups due to lack of supplies, and you can understand how normal people who most likely were just regular workers on the Sevastopol can turn into killers in a horrible situation. But it's not always like that though. During my second playthrough of the game, I accidentally discovered that there are indeed friendly survivors on the station if you backtrack to some of the areas once you have better tools to explore for resources. Some survivors will even help you with codes to doors so that you don't have to use your loud tools, which will surely attract the alien. That's the genius of the human survivors. It's not their AI, because their AI is disappointingly basic, but it's the fact that you don't really know who's friend and who is foe, and if you find another human being, there is a good chance that that person just wants to kill you and take your shit. Or maybe not. Add to this the Working Joes, Seegson's failed attempt to compete with Weyland-Yutani on the android business. The Working Joes are supposed to represent the technology that humanity creates to make life easier and even protect ourselves if anything should go wrong. The Working Joes also represent how easily that technology can be corrupted if it's not created without proper safeguards. The Working Joes already have a history of dangerous malfunctions, and they take a big slice out of the uncanny valley when it comes to looks, which adds to their scare factor. Seekson tries to justify this by saying, "We know we are building robots, not people," over and over as one of their propaganda messages over station intercoms, but it's obvious that this criticism is a half-hearted jab aimed at the superior androids of Weyland-Yutani. Seekson can only walk in Weyland-Yutani's shadow. They cut corners in many ways, especially with their pale-skinned, emotionless androids. This makes them terrifying when they go on a murderous rampage against any human they encounter. Their polite yet static voice when they talk, their slow but menacing walk as they spot you and you have to avoid them, and their lethal strength adds to the feeling of being trapped, as if things weren't bad enough already. The Working Joes are not as unpredictable as the alien, but their stiff walk, soulless stare, and polite enthusiasm for murder make them a perfect threat when the alien is not around. Although, there will be plenty of situations where you have to contend with both of them at the same time, which leads to some of the game's more tense moments. So far, I've talked about Alien Isolation in terms of protagonist, antagonist, story, setting, and environment. But there is one more issue I want to tackle because it seems that there is one thing that keeps Alien Isolation from being enjoyed by everyone. That issue is difficulty. I have heard Alien Isolation be referred to as a niche game, mainly because of its difficulty, which is a special type of difficulty. The game is a stealth game, but it is a game that requires exploration for you to progress and find extra resources that help you in your journey if you decide to backtrack with upgraded tools. You can only save your game with save stations, and if you are killed in any way, then it's back to the previous save station, even if that save station was 15 minutes ago. The thing is, the game is not shy in punishing you if you decide to explore. Even if it is required due to the story, either the alien, the androids, or even humans will make that exploration tense and even frustrating if you are not diligent and patient enough to meet its challenge. You have to play Alien Isolation on its own terms, and that's great for a big chunk of gamers who want to play something different, but it also drives away an equally large number of casual players who love the Alien franchise but don't have time to devote to the demands that Alien Isolation imposes on them. There is this high horse rebuttal that these gamers should just get good, but I think this form of thinking drives away people who might otherwise contribute to the gaming community, even as casual gamers. I've seen people treat casual gamers as not real gamers, but I never understood that type of ideology. Games are for everyone, and there is no starting point for when someone becomes a gamer. Some gamers are more structured for more serious games, sure, but that doesn't mean that casual gamers can't enjoy a good game that demands more than just a casual playthrough. So, in the case of Alien Isolation, its difficulty is a double-edged sword. While researching for this video, I came across a blog by a man called Farr. I'll put a link to the blog on the description below. He wrote an article about how he loves the Alien franchise and was very excited to play Alien Isolation. And for the first few hours, it was everything he could have ever wanted out of a video game within the Aliens franchise. However, it soon became too hard. The tension became frustration, and being eaten by the xenomorph time and time again went from being terrifying to being anger-inducing. When I read this article, I got a little sad when the author admitted that he gave up and didn't play the game until years down the line because of the difficulty, even on easy. It saddened me because I consider this game to be fantastic. Maybe not a classic, but definitely one that everyone should give a shot, especially if you are an Alien fan. However, I'd be lying if I didn't admit that the same reasons why someone like Farr stopped playing the game were the same reasons why I personally could not put it down. I absolutely love the challenge that this game presented to me. Hell, I even played on Nightmare difficulty for shits and giggles, and it definitely lives up to its name. Seriously, do not play this game on Nightmare difficulty. I only did it because I'm stupid. However, Creative Assembly seemed to have noticed the complaints of how hard this game can be because they added a novice difficulty, which makes it more accessible to casual players. Some gamers who consider themselves hardcore gamers might turn their noses on this and decry that if you can't beat the game at its hardest difficulty, then you don't deserve to finish it. But I see nothing wrong with accommodating gamers who don't have the time to play games at their hardest difficulty. That kind of ideology might have been passable in the 90s, but not today. People got shit to do in their lives besides gaming, and to deny these people enjoyment of a game solely to honor its timeless monster through difficulty is admirable but foolish, considering all gamers should enjoy games without judgment of how hardcore they are. Besides, if you want to play the game on hard difficulty, then play it on hard difficulty. No one is stopping you. But overall, Alien Isolation is a great game, but you have to have the right mindset in order to get the most out of it, regardless of difficulty. It is a niche game. The game will punish you with one of sci-fi's most iconic monsters for doing basically what you have to do to reach your next objective. But with the right mindset and patience and nerves of steel, eluding the alien and outsmarting it is one of the most satisfying gaming experiences you'll have. Just make sure to keep your head down and to stay quiet, because in space, no one can hear you scream. Thank you for watching.